Welcome to the fourth edition in our in-depth look at some controversial World Cup tournaments. More World Cups than you think have been overshadowed by allegations of sports washing, like in Italy in 1934 and Argentina in 1978. But now we move on to perhaps some more obvious and in-the-news discussions, focusing on Russia, who held the tournament 2018. Russia as we know it today is a relatively new nation. Until 1991, it was part of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's national football team had a mixed record in World Cup history, with some notable achievements, but also some disappointing results. The USSR, as it was known, first qualified for the World Cup in 1958 and went on to compete in a total of 7 tournaments. Their best performance came in 1966, when they came fourth. They were eliminated by hosts and eventual winners, England. The USSR were also 3-time runners-up of the European Championship and even champions of the tournament in 1960, although it was a completely different and much smaller format to the tournaments of today. The Soviet Union didn't consistently perform too well in World Cups. They failed to qualify for the tournament on several occasions and were often eliminated in the group stage when they did qualify. But some of their performances, especially in the European Cup, showed that they are certainly a nation of footballing heritage. The USSR teams were always highly regarded for their technical ability and tactical acumen, and this part of the world produced some of the best players of the 20th century, like Oleg Blokhin, who was the most capped ever USSR international, as well as their top goalscorer, and of course, the famous Black Spider, goalkeeper Lev Yashin, whom many regard as the best keeper of all time. The Russian national team since then has not been as successful, their best performance being reaching the semi-finals of the 2008 Euro Championships. Though that was an impressive feat, it was the first time as a sovereign nation they made it past any international group stage. They would later go on to reach the quarter-finals of their home World Cup in 2018, famously defeating Spain in the round of 16. The Russian team has been improving in recent years, and has become a more consistent presence at major tournaments once again. Russia always have some top quality players, and clubs like Zenit, CSKA and Spartak are no strangers to the Champions League. These clubs have brilliant youth systems and stunning infrastructure, so the nation will always compete on a European level and export fine talent. Though Russia aren't World Cup contenders, they are far from an embarrassment, as they proved in 2018. Add all of this to their successful football history as the USSR and the size, infrastructure and economic power of the country, and in Russia, you have a nation that was always likely to become a possible World Cup host, and a team that on the pitch you could argue will only get better and better in the decades to come. The 2018 World Cup hosted by Russia was marred by controversy, mainly due to the bidding process itself, which historically, for the first time, was announced alongside Qatar's successful 2022 bid. But we will save that story for the next video. Anyway, there were allegations of bribery and corruption involving FIFA officials, and the decision to award the tournament to Russia was met with much criticism. This led to a number of investigations, including one by the Swiss authorities, into the bidding process. Another major controversy surrounding the tournament was Russia's human rights record, particularly with regards to its treatment of the LGBTQ community. There were concerns that the tournament would be used as a platform to promote anti-gay policies and that LGBTQ fans and players would be at risk during the tournament. There were also concerns about Russia's involvement in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Before 2018, the situation was not what it is today, but it was still far from peaceful. Many believed, therefore, that there was a dangerous potential for the tournament to be used as a propaganda tool. Some countries, including the UK and the US, called for a boycott of the tournament, and there were calls for FIFA to reconsider the decision to award Russia the World Cup. As we all know, 5 years later, the tournament went ahead as planned, and like Qatar 22, it was followed and celebrated just as much as any World Cup before. There were high attendances, world-class atmospheres, thrilling games, and hundreds of thousands of visiting fans that came from all 4 corners of the globe to enjoy the football and Russia as a host nation. There were, however, a number of high-profile incidents during the tournament, including violence and hooliganism, which cast a shadow over the tournament. But as tends to be the case, the public don't remember those incidents afterwards. They remember the glitz and the glamour, and what was a stunning finale, with France beating Croatia 4-2 in the final. So how fishy was Russia's 2018 winning bid? Russia would suggest the allegations are all simply Western conspiracies and that none of them have any proof. But for others, the tournament was a clear case of sports washing, a state using the beautiful game to portray an image that may not be true or cover up an ugly image they don't want the world to see. What do you think? Perhaps events such as the annexation of Crimea, interference in the Syrian conflict, and allegations of interference in foreign elections might all be good reasons to use football to clear up your global image. Russia's 2018 World Cup bid was certainly controversial whatever side of the debate you're on. Allegedly bribing FIFA officials is quite a serious accusation, and if true, an even more serious crime. It was alleged that Russia bribed FIFA officials in order to secure their vote. In particular, some claimed that members of the Russian bid committee offered gifts and made payments to FIFA executives in exchange for their vote. There were also claims that some FIFA officials had conflicts of interest that influenced their vote in favour of Russia. For instance, some FIFA executives were reportedly linked to Russian companies or held positions in Russian-linked organisations. This tactic might sound familiar. Take for example, Qatar Airways having a lucrative partnership with Neymar, who is also a PSG player, the club that they sponsor. Certain conflicts of interest like this can make for some interesting financial transactions. And a theme in sports washing is that people, their whereabouts, and their business interests seem to connect at certain points. Critics also claimed that the Russian bidding team used its wealth and political influence to intimidate voters and sway them in its favour. Some reports have suggested that the Russian government used its diplomatic and economic power to influence FIFA officials and secure the vote. It has been suggested that the Russian bidding team provided false information and exaggerated the country's ability to host the World Cup. This may not be a typical sports washing trick of old, as in the 20th century enough bribery seemed to do the job. But in the 21st century, corruption may still be king. However, it is less front and centre and more in the shadows. Finally, it was also claimed that members of the Russian organising team offered high-paying jobs or business opportunities to FIFA officials in exchange for their vote. For example, some have suggested that Russian companies offered lucrative consulting contracts or even board positions to FIFA executives. These allegations have not been proven, it must be said, but it must also be said that expert sports washers are not the sort to give away evidence easily. Sports washing is a dirty business that needs to look clean. The majority of the allegations surrounding Russia's successful bid to host the tournament were largely based on circumstantial evidence and testimonies from whistleblowers. FIFA has consistently defended the integrity of the bidding process, but they haven't exactly been the most above-board organisation in recent times, and the allegations of corruption continue to cast a shadow over the Russia 2018 World Cup bid and the country's hosting of the tournament. The hosting of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics as well as the 2018 World Cup have been seen by many as attempts to sports wash the country's image, particularly in light of Russia's actions in Ukraine and its involvement in the Syrian civil war. Russia seemed to have reason to be sports washing, and it's not the first time they would have been accused of corruption. Critics have argued that Putin has used these events to showcase Russia as a modern and sophisticated nation, while downplaying its human rights abuses and controversial actions. Putin has consistently denied all allegations and has stated that the hosting of major sporting events is an important part of Russia's bid to promote itself as a world-class nation. Accusations of sports washing will continue to dog the country and its leader and remain a source of controversy in the world of international sports. But for the moment, Russia is rather preoccupied in the Ukraine and is facing a wrath of international pressure and criticism. The 2018 World Cup seems a very distant history. Russia has essentially been exiled by FIFA. Deputy Prime Minister Vitaly Mutko, who is also the head of the Russian Football Union, has threatened a protest against FIFA and their decision to ban Russia from the next World Cup. But it doesn't seem like Russia will have a lot of allies when it comes to that fight, and as long as they are in Ukraine, they won't be playing competitive football. Russia 2018 seems a more subtle propaganda tactic than, say, that employed by the dictatorships in Argentina and Italy. But maybe that is just how modern sports washing looks. What do you guys think? Make sure to let us know and stay tuned for the next video of this series.